Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to have a look at 16 different rose breeders and I will let you know my opinion about each and also my favorite rose from each. So let's start out here. The first one is this smaller breeder from Belgium called Viziers. And Viziers made one very popular rose that's very famous out in the world, but it's not my favorite. That rose is called Minerva. It is this more purple one here, more. It's kind of like Iptide, really, in this kind of color tone. But in my opinion, it's not one of his best roses because it doesn't really highlight how amazing he can make the fragrance in his roses. But it is a decent rose, but that's more one of the normal ones, I say, in his assortment, even though it's one of the most popular ones. The roses I really tend to like from him is Peter Paul Rubens, and what he's really good at is taking an old Austin rose and combine it with something else. It can be a Danish rose, it can be a German rose, an old Danish or an old German rose, or modern Danish or modern German rose. He can take those and combine them, and he often achieves a wonderful fragrance by doing that. Like Peter Paul Rubens was bred from Golden Celebration. Something like Shan Robbie was bred from the old Austin rose Charlotte. And you have some of my favorite roses like Floriana and Carmenia, and he honestly makes such wonderful fragrant roses. Perfume Dreams, the Climber, that's very spring flower scented. So what I really like about Viziers is a lot of his roses are very, very powerfully fragrant, and he also manages to kind of keep the look of the English rose with this more historic look to it, but he manages to make some fragrances on those things that really rivals even Austin. Like some of his roses are more fragrant than Austin roses. You can take Peter Paul Rubens. Peter Paul Rubens is more fragrant than I would say 95% of all Austin roses. It is a very, very fragrant fruit myrrh, that one. Floriana, again, extremely, extremely fragrant. And Carmenia, also a wonderful damask fragrance. So what is my favorite rose from this company? It would have to be a fight to the death between Floriana and Peter Paul Rubens, I think. Floriana is probably the better whole package deal, while Peter Paul Rubens is well, I guess it's because I like Boscobel. If you like Boscobel, you also really have to check out Peter Paul Rubens, because it's a wonderful rose, that one too. So yeah, what is the next one on my list here? It is Tantau. Tantau is much more famous. Most people know Tantau, and what I really like about Tantau is the roses are always extremely healthy. It is very rare you get disease in a Tantau rose, and they also tend to make excellent cut flowers. If I had to mention some downsides with Tantau is in a lot of the roses the fragrance is often a little bit tea dominated, and you don't tend to get always an amazing fragrance when you just scroll through this assortment and pick a random rose. They do have some really fragrant roses like Capri, Pacific Blue, and Goethe, and a lot of these other ones are really amazing on fragrance. But if you take it in general, a lot of it is very dominated by these very, very healthy, very large bloomed tea hybrid roses with not a lot of fragrance, but a very impressive long-lasting bloom. So if you don't care that much about fragrance, but you prefer a very reliable rose with large bloom, a lot of Tantau roses can do that, and they also tend to be decent cut flowers. I wish that I wish they made a line just for fragrance, because they do make some really, really excellent fragrant roses. And I also like some of the varieties like Modern Art that are more mild in the scent. It definitely makes some good roses. I think my favorite rose from Tantau is either going to have to be Pacific Blue or Goethe. I don't think Grafen von Hardenberg, even though it is an extremely good rose, good red rose. I'm not sure. And Goethe can also be. I actually think I'll have to go with Pacific Blue here, only because Pacific Blue is either Pacific Blue or Goethe, because Goethe is one of the best purple roses, and Pacific Blue is one of the best lavender roses, if not the best. But I think Pacific Blue doesn't really have a rival, while Goethe has Laudatio as a rival, so I think I'll have to go with Pacific Blue here. One thing I do wish about Tantau was they would take a bit more of a risk, a bit more chances, I guess, and try to create a fragrant rose lineup, because I do find a lot of the assortment can be kind of boring, in my opinion. But I guess that because I'm a fragrance lover, I have to think that way. But I really wish they would take some more chances and maybe try to do a fragrance, a lineup just for fragrance, or just go crazy wild and try to create some multicolored new colors or something else. I think Tantau tends to play it extremely safe, maybe a bit too safe. And I know they can make amazing fragrant roses. You have Fragrant Cloud, Duftwolke, all the other ones I just mentioned. And I'm actually in doubt now, because I just remembered Mildred Shield Deep Secret. That's a real rival to Pacific Blue. Yeah, it's either Pacific Blue, Goethe, or Deep Secret. They're all amazing Tantau roses, and I wish Tantau would kind of breathe some more of those lineups and make a fragrance lineup just for fragrance, really. But what is the next one? The next one is Caudace. So we're still in Germany. We're just jumping over to Caudace roses. And let's see here, Caudace roses. Caudace roses has actually gotten a lot of attention in recent years because of the Perfumer collection. And there's a lot of really good roses in the Perfumer collection. You have Summer Romance, you have Raspberry Cupcake. They have made so many wonderful roses. You have the Lush Cut Flower Courage, you have Bliss Perfumer, you have Joy de Vivre. They have honestly created many, many good roses, Caudace roses. I would say what defines them is they do have very good health, kind of like Tantau, but they do tend to put more of a fragrance twist to the roses. So in that way, they're kind of like a lot of the Paulson Renaissance series, and that you often tend to have a modern rose mixed with an old rose for fragrance. The only thing that annoys me a little bit with Caudace, even though they make really amazing roses, is the fact a lot of the roses seem to be spending a lot of time budding in the budding phase. They tend to take a long time developing the flowers, except for a few exceptions like Joy de Vivre and some others. But a lot of the fragrance series tend to take a long time to develop the flower. And that combined with another bad habit, the fact they tend to get rain damaged on a lot of the roses, kind of leads to a very bad situation. I wish Caudace would try to do something about, especially the rain damage. So something like Earth Angel, even though it's an amazing rose, is very impossible to grow in a lot of climates simply because of rain damage. And Grafen Diana, even though it's an amazing red rose, tends to spend a long time budding up, and it can also quite easily shatter. So they definitely have some work to do, not on the health of the roses, but on the flowering of the roses, in my opinion. If I had to pick my favorite Codès rose, that's a tough one. I think I would have to give it to either, I think Summer Romance, or maybe it should be Joy de Vive, one of those, I think. But they have made a lot of really good roses, Codès, and also something like Kiss Me Kate, the Climber. That is also a really good one. The only thing I will mention about Kiss Me Kate, the Climber, though, is you do need to give it a lot of sunlight. It is a very healthy rose, but if you want to turn it really floriferous, and you do need to give it a lot of sunlight. It is not as shade tolerant as many other roses. So if you get that one, you should probably consider planting it where you have a lot of sun, towards the southern side of a house. It will still bloom on the north side. It will just bloom a lot less than if you place it on the south side. But yeah, so many amazing Codès roses. You have Fruity Parfumer, also a really good fragrant Codès rose. And I know a lot of people have found something like Pompanella really, really amazing. Not for fragrance, but for reflowering. I sadly haven't grown that one. I've thought about it, but my Rue breeder, the historic one, is kind of hanging in there. And I'm like, oh, will it turn into something or will it not? And if it doesn't develop into anything I like, I think I'll replace Rue breeder with Pompanella. At least that is my intention. So yeah, Codès roses, they need to work a little bit on the blooming habit of the roses. And the next one is the Serbian Fenoggeno roses. Fenoggeno roses. Yeah, Fenoggeno roses is very known for creating these more edible roses you can use for cooking. But they also have a lot of fragrant lineups, and they have create a lot of different roses. One thing I really like about Fenoggeno is they tend to breed quite small roses, around these 50 to 60 centimeters. So they're excellent roses for something like pots or something like small spaces, or just to place at the front of a flower bed. I haven't really been eating these roses a lot. I haven't really found them that tasty, the ones I've tried, but honestly, I'm not eating rose petals all the time, so I'm not really one to ask about that. But I do find them to be excellent roses, and I have enjoyed a few of them, like Parfume Fashion and René van Weekberg. Parfume Fashion is a very low-growing one that has this kind of citrus geranium scent, just like Raspberry Cupcake. And my favorite is probably René van Weekberg, also known as Theo Clivers, I believe. They say it has an ice cream scent, but what I really like about it is this kind of red-pink blush center, and also the health of it. Leaf health on it just shines, and it is very healthy. It does have a slight mix between, I think it was a Galca fragrance it was giving me the last time, but it is usually a mix. So yeah, which is my favorite rose from Fenoggeno? I actually think it is René van Weekberg. But I do like Drager Freyla also, the small red one. That was a really floriferous rose for its size. And I also believe, what was it called? There was this one that was down here. Well, Evelyn Wild, I believe it was called. Evelyn Wild. It also had a really pretty color. But Fenoggeno roses are really good roses if you don't have a lot of space and you just want something that stays around these 50 to 60 centimeters. Because a lot of the other breeders, the roses tend to start around 80 centimeters and then they just get progressively taller. And they do tend to be decently healthy roses also. So definitely a good young company from Serbia. If you want those more miniature, more low-growing patio roses. But what is the next one? The next one is the Danish rose breeder Poulsen roses. Now, Poulsen roses created a lot of different lineups, and some of the roses are extremely fragrant, some of them are not fragrant. They have everything from dwarf roses to everything from miniature climbers to really, really big roses to roses that look like Austin roses, the Renaissance collection. They have this other rose collection a lot of people know about. It is called the Paramount series. And the Paramount series is where they focus on these big fragrant tea hybrids. Compact, big fragrant tea hybrids. It is really a series I've been looking to explore more, kind of like the Renaissance series. The Renaissance series is what comes closest to Austin roses, is where you take the old historic roses and interbreed with some modern Danish roses. Kind of the same as Austin did, just with the English roses. So it is a very varied lineup. Some of the roses are absolutely amazing. Some of them are really just your average rose, really. Some of them aren't that exciting, and some of them can be a bit boring, like I sometimes give Tantau a little critique for. Poulsen is very varied in his lineup. It's kind of like a sandbox. You have to go digging through it, and maybe you find some gold, and maybe you find something that you just throw to the side, and that's kind of how I would describe the Poulsen roses. But if you know what lineup you're looking for, if you know what rose type you're looking for, you can absolutely find something that does the job when it comes to Poulsen roses. I think my favorite Poulsen rose, it has to be Mom in a Million, Guitar Renaissance. And there's a lot of other good Poulsen roses. You have Claire Renaissance, you have Princess Alexandra Renaissance. You have so many good Renaissance collection series, and I also really look forward to exploring the Paramount series from Poulsen, but I find the Paramount series is a lot harder to find than the Renaissance series, and a lot of the Paramount series has actually been winning a lot of fragrance medals. They're just so much harder to find for me. They're not as popular, and because of that, they're not being sold as often at nurseries. But I'm hoping to find more from the Paramount series. So yeah, what would I say that Poulsen should work on? Well, I guess kind of like Cordès often, some of the roses in the Renaissance collection can suffer rain damage, and I don't find they have problems unfolding. I actually believe most of them unfold right. It's just rain damage. And I also sometimes think that Poulsen roses can get a bit vertical in growth habit compared to many other rose breeders. Of course, they can both be an advantage or a disadvantage, but in general, I tend to prefer the more round shrubs, I guess. But Poulsen roses makes excellent roses. If you haven't tried Mom in a Million, really go get that one. Absolutely amazing fragrance on that one. And let's see here, my big list here. What's the next one? It is Milan roses. Milan roses. Now, it is no secret that Milan has bred some of my absolute most favorite roses in modern time. Something like Princess Céline de Monaco, absolutely amazing rose. That's the reason I always keep it in my top 3. Very healthy, very fruitiferous, powerful scent, unique look. It's just an amazing rose. But if I had to describe Milan, it is kind of like Poulsen. You have so many different lineups. of different rose types. So they do everything from these very, very nearly boring, safe roses, kind of like Bonica you can use if you're renting out apartments and you want something maintenance-free to place in your apartment complex or something in front of it. And then they have the Parfum de Provence series that is a very, very potently a lineup of fragrant roses that are simply amazing on scent. And that is again like it is like Paulson. It is this sandbox where you go digging through and you will find so many hidden treasures you don't know, and a lot of things you'll throw to the side. And I think that is also why something like Paulson roses and Milan roses can be a bit harder for beginners to get into, because you have to know what lineup to look for. You have to know which roses to disregard and which ones to really hone in on. And I think that is the problem with some of these very multi-talented breeders that can do everything, is they have such a wide selection that sometimes the best roses kind of like drowns in the selection. And I think like breeders like Milan and Paulson need to be better to tell people like, hey, this is what our 10 best roses. I really think you should try these and see how it goes, because I think a lot of the really great roses are drowning kind of like in the huge selection of roses. But Milan roses, honestly, they make some of the. If I had to say one breeder that has a really wide range of fragrant roses across all colors, across most fragrance types, it would have to be Milan roses. That Parfum de Provence series is a very, very good series for fragrance. And what is my favorite rose from Milan? It would probably have to be, I think it is Princess Celine de Monaco. There's nearly no doubt about that. I had to think about it for a second, because I also really like Red Parfum de Provence, and I also really like Eden, and I really like Colette. But when you start adding up points, it has to be Princess Celine de Monaco. There's also so many unique fragrances in the Milan lineup. You have something like Elle Rose from the lineup that gives a very powerful banana scent. And so there's a lot of really unique scents also hidden in the Milan lineups for those of you that love fragrance. And of course you have Pierre Derty, Charmereux, all these very powerful scented white roses. You have Papa Milan, the very powerful scented red rose. The only issue I would say Milan sometimes can have is some of the roses seem to be very pretty, very fragrant. Some of them can sometimes be a little less cold hardy and a little less vigorous. But I guess that is sometimes the price of beauty, right? When they breed for something like Papa Milan, where you have this beautiful picture-perfect red rose, sometimes you can't have everything in a rose. And that's why I also sometimes say they do have some fragile beauties in their assortment. But I absolutely love Milan roses. They're very, very talented rose breeders, and they have bred many of my most favorite roses. So let's see here. What is the next one on the list? It is actually Austin roses. Austin roses. And let's see here. Austin roses. Yeah, Austin has also made a lot of my most favorite roses, and what I really like about Austin roses is this historic charm, this softness to the bushes. Very beautiful bushes for pots, for really as these solitary plants, these solitary bushes, because they leaf out well and have a very round shape and a very, very gorgeous, nostalgic look to the blooms. So I find that they do this very nostalgic look really well. They also tend to do fragrance decently well, I would say. You have some really good. I would say in particular the Mercent. They tend to do the Mercent really well. The Austin Roses. But I really love Austin Roses. He was responsible for bringing back this old garden charm. But I will say though that it did exist before. But what one has to remember was the old garden roses were very popular around the 1800s. Then these trade ships started going to China, and suddenly the old charm of these old European roses fell out of popularity because suddenly people had something that was so different from their grandparents. So these tea hybrids from China, the new colors, the new fragrances that came from them became the fashion, and all these tea hybrids. So you had these fashion shows nearly with roses where they would show off tea hybrids, and for a long time the old European roses were kind of forgotten because people had all this new stuff coming out of Asia that was more exciting than what they had seen for centuries from the parents. So for over 100 years, the old charm of European roses were forgotten. And it is really Austin we can thank for bringing a lot of that old charm back. So even though a lot of his roses are very inspired by the French roses, Comte de Chambord and all these other roses, I still think Austin played a very, very important role in bringing back the charm and the fragrance of the old historic roses from across Europe, really. One thing I dislike about Austin roses is I dislike their tendency to get black spot. A lot of the older Austin roses are bred from something like Abraham Darby. They're bred from something like Graham Thomas, and even though these roses are very fragrant, they are not always the best on black spot resistance. I will say though that Austin Roses has improved their health in recent years. I don't know what they have been crossing their roses with, but they are acting a little bit different. And if I had to guess, I would say they're crossing either with the Codès lineup or the Paulson Renaissance lineup. They're crossing with something in the German or Danish lineup, I think now. Because also the newer roses are a bit more upright, a bit more healthy. They do usually lose a little bit of that old charm they had before. And I also think Austin sometimes in their newer rose lineup has a bit of an issue now to know the final height, because they are introducing new things to hybridize with from a health perspective. Of the roses, but I absolutely love Austin roses. Like, if I had to mention my favorite Austin rose, it would probably be Woolton Old Hall, or I guess Olivia Austin. Woolton Old Hall has a powerful licorice scent, that myrrh aniseed that's very easy to sell to a Scandinavian like me. And if you can't sell myrrh licorice to a Scandinavian, then you can sell candy to children. It is as simple as that, really. But I think I will have to go with Woolton Old Hall. I like Boscobel, I like Princess Anne, I like a lot of these different Austin roses. And Austin will always be one of my favorite rose breeders. I sometimes critique Austin a little bit, and that should be no secret. It is kind of like I'll compare it to Apple and Android. You know, Apple charges over double as much for their phones, and because they charge double as much, you want them to be the most innovative, to be the best quality for the money. And I find sometimes after Austin Senior is no more, that the roses can sometimes lack a little bit in innovation, and you still have that very expensive price point. So what I really want to see Austin do is go back to being very innovative, very go back to the roots really. And I also really want to see them create red and white roses, because that is a huge part that's now missing in the modern selection. So much of it is just pink roses nowadays. I think they do pink roses really well. I think they do apricot and also these yellow colored roses really well. I really like Poet's Wife, for example, amazing fragrant rose. But yeah, they do have some issues like Bring Me Sunshine, Elizabeth, Danny. Many of the modern roses don't always stay true to height. Sometimes they get really significantly higher than what the labels originally suggested. So I don't know. I'm a bit of a mixed opinion about the new direction they're taking. I do like, however, that they try to improve the health and do something about the black spot issue. But yeah, absolutely love Wilton Old Hall and a lot of Austin roses. Really like that they brought back that old nostalgic European look. Let's continue here. Yeah, the next one is a really good new breeder. They're not really new because they've been around since the 50s, but when you're in the rose industry, that's actually quite young when many of these companies are over 200 years old. And that company is Noack Roses. Now, if you don't know the name Noack Roses, you probably know all the Timeless collection, Timeless Purple, Timeless what's called Cream, Timeless. You have Charisma, and you have all these. And they also put out a fairly new rose called Never Ending Story, which I actually like a lot. And what I do like about Noack Roses is they seem to have found a very attractive point between health and fragrance. They're not the most fragrant roses, but they're very, very solid roses when it comes to both health and fragrance. Very, very balanced roses, and they usually don't go to a 9 or 10 on fragrance, but they usually go to around an 8, and then you just get very solid health on them. They can sometimes be a little slow to flower, like a Never Ending Story can be a little slow to flower because it develops big flower heads. But there's not a whole lot to critique Noack Roses about. I actually think they're very solid roses for those who want a really good price point, but also a really good balance between health and fragrance. So definitely slowly becoming a top tier German rose breeder for sure, Noack. What is my favorite rose from Noack? That's a tough one. I think I would have to go with Laudatio, simply because it is the only purple rose I think really rivals Goethe. But a lot of the Noack roses has really impressed me. For example, the fruity fragrance on Never Ending Story. That was a really good one, and the powerful bloom and the health of it. So Noack Roses, definitely one of those younger rose houses to keep an eye on. Kind of like, I guess Vicious also is relatively young, relatively unknown. At least I think so. I haven't really checked out the date for his founding, but a lot of these smaller rose houses are actually improving the quality so much that I'm sometimes stuck wondering to myself, is it the fact that these breeders in the very young rose houses or very small rose houses are simply getting better? Or is it the fact that the very large rose houses are simply taking less chances? And I'm not sure which is which, but I can definitely say that the quality of roses across all breeders are definitely on the rise, and there's not as large a difference as there used to be. But let's continue here. And what is the next one here? I have to. Yeah, it is one of my favorites. It is number 9 on my list. It is Delbart roses. I really like Delbart roses. Delbart is one of those rose breeders that takes a lot of chances, runs a lot of risks, and he makes such amazing storytelling roses that you wouldn't believe. Like, he always manages to do something very unique, either through color or through a shape of bloom or through fragrance, and sometimes it works wonderfully, other times it doesn't work. So that is like, but no matter what happens, it is always an exciting rose to grow, because you know there's something unique in that rose that Delbart has selected for. If I had to mention my favorite, it would be Chateau de Chivonier. I also really like Terry Marks, Maurice Utrillo, Homage of Barbara. And I also think there's a certain beauty to Marc Chagall, and the fragrance of something like Chateau Chartreuse de Parme is really wonderful. So he has definitely made some of my most favorite roses, but what I really like about Delbart roses is the storytelling. You have to remember, this company started out making these painters roses, where they would go to these art exhibitions and they would kind of like ask impressionist painters how they thought about the roses, and promote the roses that way. And I think this element of risk taking, of this impressionism, of this storytelling has really just stuck with the DNA of Delbart roses. Now, there is one thing I don't like about Delbart roses. It is the habit sometimes that they do have a latent tendency to sometimes develop rust. Delbart roses are some of the roses I have had the most rust issues with. I never get black spot issues on Delbart, which is really opposite of something like Austin roses. I nearly always get black spot issues on Austin roses, but if I do have issues on Delbart roses, it is nearly always rust issues. So maybe if Delbart and Austin got together, we will either get a very amazing rose, or we'll get a rose that has both black spot and rust. But the top tier roses from each company is really fantastic. Like Chateau de Chivonier, amazing health. I'll even compare it to something like Olivia Austin. Mine is, I don't think mine has dropped even a leaf right now. It looks so amazing, full set of leaves. Even now in the middle of November, and we had like -2, -5 degrees already Celsius. So that one is still looking so pretty. I do find that there are some bad roses in the assortment. Like, I haven't had a good experience growing something like Sophie Rochas in a more wet environment, both because of the rust and also because of the tendency to ball up. But I do think I've noticed a tendency in general to the French roses to suffer a little more from rust than black spot. So it's not like I'm going to blame Delbart just for that, because I do think it is a tendency I have noticed more in the French roses than in something like the English roses or the Danish or the German roses. And it kind of makes sense, because they're probably, when it's France, they're probably bred for environments where it's not as moist. They're bred to handle more heat. So it does make sense that what they do suffer from could be a little bit different. But that is Delbart roses, absolutely amazing roses for storytelling, and Chateau de Chivonier is a really amazing rose to check out. I also really like Terry Marks, but Terry Marks, you again have to be a little careful with that rainwater. It can get a little bit of water damage on the flowers, just like a Raspberry Cupcake. I would really compare it a lot to Raspberry Cupcake in that regard. Just has a bit more raspberry flavor, while something like raspberry cupcake. Funny enough, it's funny, like the one is raspberry fragrant, but the other has raspberry in its name. I would say raspberry cupcake is more like a citrus geranium kind of mix. But let's continue here. That was still Bart. And the next one is one I actually don't have a lot of experience with, but I'm always buying roses from to get that experience, and it is Guillaume. And on Guillaume roses, I think absolutely very good roses. I'll compare him a little bit to Dilbart. Like I always have this nostalgic kind of look to the roses. This year I'm trying to grow something like it was called something like Fayette or something like that. And I also tried Abbé de Maupassant and a lot of other roses. So there's definitely some really good roses in the Guillaume selection, but I think the main issue for me right now is I have not really gotten one of his roses that has been too much about an 8 out of 10 on fragrance. I'm really looking for that one hit wonder, I guess, from Guillaume. Kind of like I had with Milan and I had with Dilbart, really. So I'll kind of hold off forming an opinion about him, because I'm always collecting more of his roses to kind of like get a sense of it. It is one of the, surprisingly enough, a lot of people don't know this, but it is one of the oldest rose breeders in the world. I think it goes all the way back to, was it the 1800s? Like one, yeah, I even think they made the first exhibition rose, what was called La France or something like that. So it is a really old rose breeding house, and the only issue I have is it is very hard for me here in Scandinavia to find the roses for sale. So whenever I see one of his roses, I always try to pick them up. I don't really have a favorite rose yet. It's sad to say, because very few selections for me, and the roses I found so far have not really been that much above average for me, but that is not unusual. Usually I have to go through like 20 or 30 roses from a breeder to really find those special ones. So that I didn't find it yet is nothing too uncommon for me. So I still think they can breed excellent roses, and I'm hoping to explore the roses more in the future if I can find them. That is always the issue, right? So yeah, what is the next one? The next one is Friar roses. Friar roses. Let's see here. Well, I'm getting cakes here, apparently. Friar roses, England. Maybe that will help. Yeah, it helped a lot, apparently. Didn't know you can get cakes also. Friar roses, I'll compare a little bit to Harkness. They have some really exciting tea hybrids, and some of them are very, very fragrant. But they also have some roses I will stay away from, or some roses I find are a bit boring. The rose I like most from Friar is probably no surprise. It is Velvet Fragrance, because that really powerful perfume. It is honestly the most scented rose in my garden. But I've also grown a lot of orange roses and all kind of roses from Friar, and they've not really stood out as something special. So I think Friar is kind of like Harkness roses for me. They have a few of these one-hit wonders, as I often say, and that's completely okay. Like when the one-hit wonders are as amazing as something like Velvet Fragrance, that is, in my opinion, nothing to be said about. So yeah, I really like Friar roses. They're very unforgotten, and I'm often lucky if I can find their roses. They often tend to be more, how to say it, often I find the 70s and 80s versions, and Sadly, I can't get a hold of a lot of their collections anymore. But it is again, often it is Brexit that's causing me problems. I can't find all of the English roses anymore, mainly the old ones. And what is the next one? The next one is Peter Beals roses. And let's see here, Peter Beals. Peter Beals is one of those I actually don't have a lot of growing experience with. I've read nearly all his books, and I think he's an amazing author, and there's a lot of wonderful information in his books. So if you haven't read the books, you can really go ahead and have a read. I personally like his books a lot because they're very broad. They go across multiple continents, across multiple rose species, across a lot of roses, really, while something like Austen books tend to be more focused on just the English roses. Really amazing roses. I know a lot out there really liked something like Oxford Physics and a lot of his other roses. I sadly can't get a hold of a lot of his selection. But if the books are anything to go by, I think he's an absolute amazing rose breeder because he certainly has the experience to make good roses. I just wish Peter Beals would ship a bit more of the selection to mainland Europe, but I also guess after Brexit, all that kind of all kind of red tape still exists, and it can be very expensive. I also understand that it might be a loss of profit to really ship too much to Europe if you have to pay for planned passports and all these other kind of quarantines and these kind of administrative stuff. Totally get that. And what is the next one on the list? It is Harkness roses. Harkness roses. Harkness roses there. Now, Harkness roses I actually like quite a bit. Like they made Chandos Beauty, they made Margaret Merrill. There's some amazing Santa roses in the Harkness lineup, and I think the roses are really quite excellent. When they hit the mark, you also have something like Red Ballerina. What I will say though that Harkness roses can sometimes suffer from is a little bit of weak wicker combined with disease resistance. You don't really see it in the top tier roses like Chandos Beauty and Margaret Merrill and Red Ballerina, but they do have a lot of roses that are not always the greatest on wicker, but they definitely also have some top tier roses. So it is, again, like I said, sometimes you have to be a bit selective, and Harkness can definitely make amazing roses. You just have to be a little bit selective in the assortment, what you choose. So nothing wrong with Harkness roses. I absolutely love Chandos Beauty, and I would recommend everyone to get a Chandos Beauty or a Margaret Merrill or a Red Ballerina. I do find them a little bit underestimated compared to something like Austen, and if you're buying in Europe, it is much cheaper to buy a Harkness rose than to buy an Austen rose, and definitely some of the really good Harkness roses have a wonderful perfume that can rival the Austen roses. Chandos Beauty is a good example of it, and so is Margaret Merrill. But let's see here, and my favorite rose from Harkness, that will of course be Chandos Beauty. And the next one is Carut, the American breeder. Carut roses. One thing I do like about Karut is he's kind of like Delbart. He likes to play around with different colors, different forms when it comes to rose breathing, and sometimes he creates some amazing roses, kind of like Rock and Roll we have here, kind of like Julia Child / Absolutely Fabulous. So he does have this tendency to play around with some unusual colors and some unusual form shapes that I believe is just perfect. It is tough for me to completely review all his roses. I also like Love Song, for example, that really cupped lavender rose, very nostalgic looking. But it is very tough for me to compare his full assortment because so little of it is available in Europe. But definitely the few roses I have from him has been very, very high quality. So I think if one is living in America, I wouldn't underestimate Karut roses. There's some really good ones stuck in there in his assortment. And I think Julia Child nearly being a hobby breeding project and ending up one of the most sold roses in the world is just a beautiful story. And I know something like Rock and Roll and a few of the others actually do have a very powerful fragrance. And from what I can tell from my American viewers, there's also a lot of other really powerful scented roses in the Karut roses. So yeah, I think maybe he's the Delbart of America. I don't know. He seems to create amazing roses and seems to play around with shape and color to make a bit of storytelling, kind of like Delbart sometimes does in France. So the few roses I have been quite amazing. So and I think my favorite will always be Julia Child of his. But I also think he was the one that bred, what was it called? A very violet one, the one that's nearly completely purple. The name escapes me now, but that was also a really, really impressive big purple bloom, that one. Was it Twilight Zone? I actually think it was Twilight Zone up here. Yeah, Twilight Zone. Just an amazing. This one is actually my most purple rose. It is not that frost hardy always, but it is an amazing purple rose. But not that frost hardy and not that floriferous unless you have a lot of sun and heat to give it, which I don't always have here in Scandinavia. But if you want a really, really purple rose, Twilight Zone is a really good pick. As long as you live somewhere slightly warmer than me, I would say Zone 8B or up, really. And what is the next one? The next one is another Danish company. This one called Escalon. And Escalon is a very young company compared to Poulsen here in Denmark. They're very famous for roses like Our Last Summer and also, I believe, Gitte Nørby and some of the other ones. So it is a really a good rose company. I have still yet to find that really powerful rose on fragrance from the assortment. They are kind of like giving me Poulsen roses when it comes to like the general vibe of the roses, but I have yet to find a really, really powerful fragrant rose in the assortment. Our Last Summer did manage to produce a few flowers that were like 8 out of 10 on fragrance, but it was just not as consistently fragrant for me as something like Kiss Me Kate. Kiss Me Kate, you just have perfect fragrance on every flower. The same with Gertrude Jekyll. But it is a rose company I'm keeping an eye on to see what they really make in the future. And I do sometimes think they can have some unusual colors also. but so far not a lot to say about them. I'm still keeping a bit of an eye on them when it comes to different roses. And what is the next one? It is it is Nerb. Nerb roses will be the last one for today. And Nerb roses. Nerve roses is one of those we are going to focus a lot on next year. We have Regasa incoming, we have Anastasia incoming, we have Eudora incoming, we have a lot of different Nerve roses. And Nerb, as far as I understood, Nerb International is more of a cooperative where you have different breeders and different people working together. So I'm quite excited to see what the quality is of the different roses. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but we're definitely going to check out how fragrant the roses is next year. We actually got most of the most fragrant lineup coming in here for next year. And we'll do a really deep dive into Nerb roses and see what they can offer us, really. But yeah, guys, that were my opinion of the different breeders. A lot of people always ask me what is my favorite breeder. The truth is, it's kind of hard for me to answer because I like the storytelling effect of something like Delbart roses. I like the very fragrant lineups, or something like Milan roses. I like the old charm of the Austin roses. I like the reliability of the German roses. And I also think from a historic perspective, it is very hard for me to answer because you have to remember so many countries contributed to rose breeding. You have Chinese rose breeders that started thousands of years ago to breed the tea fragrant roses because an emperor found a tea leaf in a teacup and it was considered a nearly holy fragrance. And then you have Persia, where we have a lot of these very, very wonderful Middle Eastern roses like Rose du Recht. We have a lot of these wonderful, really fragrant roses that came out of the area that was old Persia or the Middle East. And then you have something like the Damask roses, where they, according to some stories, they were brought to Europe from the Crusades. Then you have France. France did a whole lot for rose breeding in the 1800s with Napoleon and Malmaison and the French queen there. So it was the first attempt at modern hybridization, and also the first place where they brought in painters to make these illustrations of roses, botanical illustrations. And so many of the most amazing scents we have today here in Europe are actually legacies back from there, where they bred these very wonderful both centifolia roses and a lot of other things, these cabbage roses. So when one looks at Europe as a whole, there's a lot of shared history that made rose breeding really interesting. And you also have the English botanists that brought all this stuff from Asia back that really impacted rose breeding. So when people ask me what is my favorite rose breeder, or people say I only like, or some people tell me they only like Austin roses, or I only like Milan roses, or I only, I don't really think like that. Like I think history in a very broad perspective. There's been so many people that have contributed to rose breeding that I find a lot of different breeders brought something to the table. And I also think that which country is doing better with rose breeding often comes down to who's alive. Like, is it a really original rose breeder? Because companies often stand or fall with the rose breeders. It is their skill set that makes a really good rose company. And you can also sometimes see it a bit in the culture, like how appreciative is the culture of roses or gardening in general? Is the culture on an uprise, or is it in decline? And you'll find most countries across Europe has had this cycle going on for hundreds of years, where you have a really brilliant rose breeder, and then they die, and it kind of goes downhill, and culture doesn't appreciate gardening or roses, and then suddenly there's a renaissance, a new rose breeder, and then he dies, and it goes through these cycles. So it's not like I'm going to tell you, oh, French roses are the best, German roses are the best, because when you look at it through a historical perspective, you will find these tops and peaks and these valleys and bottoms, really. So that's my opinion about it. But yeah, guys, it is getting late here. The sun is going down, and I'm going to cook myself some food. So take care out there, guys, and have a wonderful Sunday.